Hello everyone and welcome back to Full House Sports here with myself, Charlie. Thank you firstly for everyone viewing the videos recently and giving them a like. Really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Please keep it up. Like I say, it's greatly appreciated, so thank you. Right, Zuffa Boxing. My pronunciation is probably well off. Zuffa. It's not the point. We learned a bit more about it last night on the podcast with Inside the Ring with Max Kellerman and Dana White. If you haven't listened back to that podcast, please do. I'm not going to be sat here regurgitating information from it. Please don't think that's going to be that. If you are going to watch it, prepare for Max Kellerman to be worshipping Dana White. I don't really know how to put it any other way. Listen, I like Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman's one of the real inspirations as to why I want to get into the sports media industry. Because for me, when he used to call fights on HBO, he was one of the best commentators around. He was so knowledgeable. And he showed that even the other week on his comeback with Canelo Crawford. But I do think he is starting to toe the party line quite often, especially when it comes to all things Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh. Whether he's been promised jobs by these guys, I don't know. If he has, listen, he's got to secure the bag somehow. But I do think that he's making himself... He's not discrediting himself, but he is making a lot of people who did look up to him and did think he was a fantastic boxing broadcaster go, oh, Max, you're letting yourself down a bit here. Anyways, moving on. He was on a podcast with Dana White last night. Dana White told us more about Zuffa Boxing, and I've got to say, not really sure how it's going to work. Listen, Dana White is a much richer man than I am, and probably a lot smarter man than I am in terms of a promotional sense. But I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work. So it was revealed that there's an exclusive broadcasting deal with Paramount Plus to show, I think it was 12 fight nights, I think if I remember rightly. That's interesting in itself because Turki Al-Sheikh, of course, he's had the ring on DAZN. There's been talk of the ring going into an exclusive ring pass to access all their events, similar to UFC Fight Pass, where you pay for that separately to DAZN. I know Saudi Arabia have got shares in DAZN. That was what the Club World Cup and why that was on there as well. So it's quite intriguing that you'd have another broadcaster brought into this. Whether Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh could go in separate ways, but Turki Al-Sheikh's been quite pro this. He's been quite positive around Zuffa Boxing. So there's been a lot of talk of that. If you watch the podcast, you will see that at one point Max Kellerman sort of excitedly reveals that there's going to be a Zuffa Boxing belt. That means Dana White confirmed that they are shunning the sanctioning bodies. They're not going to go down the WBC, WBA, WBO or IBF route. There's going to be a separate belt. Again, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to look, in all honesty with you. And it seems like there's a lot really still that needs ironing out and needs to be made clear. I think people are starting to look at this and go, is Dana White going to try and do with boxing what he did with the UFC? In which case, I don't think that's going to work. Boxers are more than ever aware of how much money they are worth. UFC fighters arguably still aren't. You know, and there's a lot of talk about where UFC contracts and how much these guys are earning there. And I don't think he can do that in boxing. I don't think he's going to be able to do that with what he's doing with the guys in the UFC. I think the broadcaster thing's interesting. I don't want to get into the semantics of all the broadcast deals because it's a long-winded process, but does that indicate that Turki Al-Sheikh's looking at taking the ring away from DAZN? If so, then that would leave them again back with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, potentially Top Rank. I don't actually know if Top Rank have got a promotional deal at the minute, a TV broadcaster deal, sorry, I should say. Yeah, I couldn't figure that out. I was wondering that. But I just wonder how it's going to work. Dana White on the podcast talks a lot about what he's done with the UFC and how he's made it such an event for people to watch, not just from the arena but at home. He's talked about camera angles and lighting and where they've done events. You know, you have to look at the Sphere last year that he did it in Las Vegas when O'Malley fought Merab. But I just don't know if that's what boxing fans really care about. Yes, it looks cool, but if you've not got the quality on the cards, boxing fans aren't going to watch regardless. And a lot of these boxers, a lot of the top level stars are tied into deals with promotional outfits long term, or are tied in with Turki Al-Sheikh. Does that mean that there's going to be a change in plan there in how Turki Al-Sheikh deals with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren? I know this has been speculated along for a while. You know, when it was announced that Dana White was lead promoter of Canelo Crawford, a lot of people said, where does that leave Eddie and Frank in terms of getting the talent for Turki Al-Sheikh and Oscar De La Hoya and Bob Arum and all these other guys? Where does that leave them? I saw as well on the podcast Max Kellerman talk about, well, if you win the Zuffa Boxing belt, then you go on to the Riyadh season shows. Does that not then make this belt a bit of a joke, a bit of a gimmick? Because really, you're winning a belt, but no, what are people recognising it for? Then it really becomes no different to what these WBA intercontinental or international belts are. These plastic baubles that some fighters parade around wearing anyway. It doesn't really make it that much different to that, apart from the fact that it's got Dana White's name behind it. And thirdly, he's got to find the fighters to sign. That's the thing, because he can sign up loads of young fighters, and box fans will watch because box fans are appreciative of talent. But he's not going to sell out Madison Square Garden or Las Vegas or anywhere like that with just those guys. You've got to be big ticket sellers. In which case, where do you go with them? Do you look at going and finding fighters who are maybe at the end of their deals with their promoters? Are they then going to compete with Zuffa Boxing title? You know, is a Terence Crawford, if he's going to sign to Zuffa Boxing, is he going to fight for a Zuffa Boxing belt? I think there's a lot of flaws to the plan. I think there's a lot of flaws. The broadcasting thing will be interesting. What happens there? Do DAZN know about it? Does Turki Al-Sheikh want to keep it separate? The fighters, he's got to start announcing signings, surely. I mean, Zuffa Boxing's been in the works. Mikey Garcia was rumoured to be signing with them years ago. This has been in the works for a long time. Surely he's got to be feeling some fighters out. And the whole belt scenario as well is very interesting and very gimmicky, it feels. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. We already have too many belts in boxing. The last thing we need is another one. And if you are looking at doing a universally recognised world title, then you've got to have the best fighters there. You can't claim I've got the Zuffa belt, but then it's on some prospect, because people are going to go, so what? He'd get eaten alive by X, Y, Z. I thought it was quite showing Callum Walsh on the Canelo Crawford undercard. Didn't look amazing, wasn't blowing my socks off. And Vargas, who's really inexperienced, put up a very good fight and gave Callum Walsh a very decent test. Callum Walsh, I don't think is going to compete in what is an ultra-competitive super welterweight division. I think he'd struggle in that division. It's interesting. I saw Dustin Poirier call up Nate Diaz for a 12-rounder on it. Is that the route Dana White's going to go now? Surely not. Surely he's not, because that's a Misfits style event. Surely he's not going to go down the route of putting on retired UFC fighter versus retired UFC fighter. We saw how they could end at the weekend with Wanderlei Silva, but that's a different story. I don't know. Seems to be a lot of planning in that aspect, in terms of broadcast deals, what the belts will look like, etc. You've got to have people to fight for it. You've got to get the respect. And whereas in the MMA world, Dana White was a big fish. The UFC does what the UFC does. He hasn't got anyone to answer to. There's a lot of promotional outfits in boxing who are going to go, no, we're not giving you our guy. We don't want to give you our guy. You know, Matchroom, Queensbridge, Golden Boy, Top Rank, PBC. I know what's going on with them. They're not doing much at the moment. Boxer have just signed a deal with the BBC in Britain. You know, there's 6 for you. Plus Turki Al-Sheikh in the ring. What are they doing with it? It's an interesting one. It's an intriguing one. I personally think it won't work. I personally think it won't get off the ground as well as he hopes, and I think I can see it ended or having to be adapted quite early doors. But Dana White's a really clever man, and he does make things work. We saw it during COVID. Fight Island and whatever, they were the first to come back. He said they were going to be, and they were. He found a way because he's determined, and he's a very good promoter. So sound like Max Kellerman now. Anyways, give us a like, guys. Please subscribe if you like the content. Anything you guys do is greatly appreciated. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. Please comment your views on this, and have a great evening. Thank you.